Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place where we sift through stacks of research, notes, you name it, to really hand-deliver the best bits of knowledge straight to you. Today, we're zeroing in on something that feels, well, fundamental, but also weirdly often misunderstood. Setting strategic goals. Every big thing you try to do, whether it's launching a product, building a business, leading some big initiative, it all starts with knowing where you're going. And it's not just setting any goal, right? It's about setting strategic goals, the kind that don't just point to the end, but actually light up the whole path. We want to cut through the noise today.
Exactly. And that's so important because, our sources really drive this home. Strategic goals aren't just a to-do list, not at all. They're more like your compass for the whole organization. They guide decisions, get teams aligned, and give you that essential way to measure if you're actually making progress. And let's be honest, in today's world, which is just so complex, changing so fast, getting this right isn't just nice. It's like fundamental for success.
Yeah, fundamental. And to really frame this, one source quoted Tony Robbins, which I thought was great. Setting goals is the first step in turning the invisible into the visible. I love that. It just perfectly captures the power we're talking about here. So our mission for this deep dive, pull out those really key, maybe even surprising insights from all the material we went through, help you get the what, the why, and most importantly, the effective how of setting goals that actually make an impact. Let's make the invisible visible. Okay, so let's unpack this properly. We should probably start with the basics. What are strategic goals, really? Our sources define them as, well, high-level objectives looking towards the future, and they have to be deeply tied into the organization's main vision and mission. We're talking the big picture here. Where do you want to be in, say, 1 year, 3 years, maybe even 10 years down the line? And critically, they're different. They're not your daily tasks or even those quarterly targets you might set. Strategic goals are usually pretty ambitious. They almost always need different teams working together. They shape budgets, how you allocate resources. And this is key. For strategy, they look outwards. They have to consider market trends, what customers need, what competitors are doing, not just internal stuff. That broader view is what makes them strategic.
Right. And what's really fascinating there, digging into the material, is this delicate balance, isn't it, between aiming high and, well, aiming too high. So many organizations trip up here. Our sources showed that. They either play it too safe, set goals that don't really inspire anyone, or they go completely the other way, set these wildly ambitious goals that are just, frankly, impossible to reach. The real skill, the art of it, seems to be finding that sweet spot, that kind of Goldilocks zone, where the goal is bold enough to get people excited and really stretch the organization, but it's also realistic enough that people don't just give up when they hit the first bump in the road. It's less about a perfect number, maybe, and more about deeply understanding your organization's capacity to stretch without breaking.
That balance sounds incredibly tricky, though.
Mhm.
Did the sources give any, real-world signs or red flags for when a goal tips over from just being bold to actually breaking the organization?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. A big red flag the research points to is when a goal demands a complete overhaul of everything, like immediately, without first building the necessary foundations or making sure you actually have the resources lined up. That's often a sign it's detached from reality, and that detachment, it leads to burnout, cynicism, and, ultimately the goal fails. But on the flip side, when they're done right, these strategic goals, they really do unify everyone. They energize the teams. They build this strong sense of accountability, kind of like the scaffolding you need to build that long-term success piece by piece. Get it wrong, though, and you're not just missing out. You're actively creating confusion, maybe even losing serious momentum. It's not optional. It's essential.
Okay, that makes total sense. So we've got the what. But here's where, for me, the sources got really interesting. They strongly argued that without that deep why, a real vision, a clear purpose, even the best strategy, is kind of aimless, like a ship without a rudder. Can you elaborate a bit on how that why actually works as that sort of North Star for an organization, especially when things get tough?
That's a great point. And the material backs it up consistently. Goals that come from a strong, clear vision, they're just more meaningful. And crucially, they're more sustainable. This why isn't just internal chatter either. It acts like a magnet. It pulls in the best talent, people who connect with that purpose. It builds deeper customer loyalty because people feel they're part of something bigger. It makes partnerships stronger. When the vision and the strategy click together perfectly, execution becomes more than just efficient. It gets really powerful. Resilient, too. It keeps everyone focused and inspired, even when, the unexpected happens.
Right. Now, okay, shifting gears slightly. A lot of us know the SMART framework, right?
Mhm.
Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound. And our sources definitely confirmed its value. It's a solid tool for clarity, for accountability. No doubt about it.
It is invaluable for that structure. But what was interesting in our deep dive was the push to go beyond just SMART. Clarity is vital, yes, but strategic goals. They also need emotional resonance. The research really asks, do people actually believe in these goals? Do they connect with the challenges, the hopes of right now? And importantly, can they adapt when things get disrupted? In fact, we saw some discussion about expanding SMART, adding E for evaluate and R for revisit. This recognizes that goals aren't carved in stone. They should be living things. So the best goals, they're not just smart, they're inspiring, they're inclusive, and fundamentally, they're adaptable.
That idea of emotional resonance is powerful. But thinking practically, in some places, maybe very data-driven, high-pressure environments, how do leaders actually create that feeling without it seeming, fake or forced? Any practical tips from the sources?
Yeah, they did touch on that. And it often boiled down to a couple things: transparency and genuine involvement. Leaders need to share not just what the goal is, but the story behind it. What problem does it solve? What opportunity does it create? And crucially, they need to ask for input early on. Let teams have a say in how they'll contribute to reaching it. This isn't just about making people feel good. It's about building real shared ownership, making sure the goals actually mean something to the people doing the work. It shifts from being management's goal to our purpose.
Okay, that makes sense. And it leads perfectly into the next big piece.
Yeah.
How do we actually do this? How do we make these ambitions real? Defining them as one thing, putting them into action is another. And that's where execution and especially team alignment really makes a difference. Separates the dreamers from the doers, you could say. A strategic goal, no matter how brilliant, is just words on a page if nobody buys into it. Leaders have to communicate these goals super clearly, keep hammering home that why we just talked about, and show exactly how each person, each role, fits into the bigger picture.
Exactly. And it's not just top-down telling people what to do. Alignment is definitely a two-way street. Clear communication from the top, essential. But the sources really stressed how important listening is, too. Employees need real chances to give feedback, to raise worries, suggest better ways, maybe even propose totally new approaches. When you have that participation, you don't just get buy-in. You unlock a huge amount of energy and morale across the board. Without that feedback loop, even the smartest plans can just sit there, unused.
Yeah, absolutely. And to help with all this, our deep dive looked at some practical tools, the frameworks people actually use, things like SWOT analysis, which most people know, but also OKRs, objectives and key results, and the balanced scorecard. The material pointed out that OKRs have become really popular, particularly in tech and high-growth companies, mostly because they're good at breaking down big goals into measurable results. They really focus teams on the outcome, not just being busy. Of course, there's tons of strategic planning software now to help track it all.
Sure, the tools can be helpful, but what's really important is the thinking behind them. And actually, our research found a surprising warning specifically about OKRs. Their success often depends less on the framework itself and more on whether leadership commits to not tying them directly to individual performance reviews or bonuses. The sources warn that as soon as goals become metrics for pay, ambition tends to shrink. People start sandbagging, setting easier targets they know they can hit. That's a really critical point that often gets missed when companies just copy the OKR model. So yes, transparency helps accountability, but the right tool is one that fits your culture and truly empowers people without creating those kinds of perverse incentives.
That's a crucial distinction, isn't it? Really brings home that human element again. So, okay, goals are set, maybe you pick a tool. The next step is obviously measuring progress. That old saying, what gets measured gets managed. It definitely applies here. Strategic goals need clear, key performance indicators, KPIs, to make progress visible and actionable for everyone.
Exactly. And our sources hammered this home. Regular check-ins are vital. Monthly, quarterly, annually, whatever fits. Not just to see if you're on track, but maybe more importantly, to figure out when you need to adjust the strategy. Markets change, people leave, unexpected things happen, it's guaranteed. Being strategic doesn't mean being rigid and sticking to plan no matter what. It means being intentional, yes, but also responsive. Goal setting isn't a one-off event. It's a continuous conversation. It's about learning and adapting as you go.
That idea of an ongoing conversation really connects to something else the sources explored. How strategy interacts with, well, something fuzzier but incredibly powerful organizational culture. I've definitely seen this myself. The fancy strategic posters go up in the hallway, but by month 2, nobody's really thinking about them. Our sources highlighted how common that is and how strategy works best when it actually reflects and strengthens the culture you already have. Like if you have a culture that truly values innovation, it's going to naturally support goals around growth and trying new things much better.
hmm And this leads to a really profound point the material made. When your ambitious goals clash with the underlying culture, you almost always get resistance, or maybe worse, just apathy. People just check out. Imagine setting super aggressive sales targets in a company where the deepest value is all about collaboration and building long-term customer trust. It's set up to fail, isn't it? There's that famous saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Cool. But the sources added a nuance. The right strategy, implemented thoughtfully, can actually help the culture evolve and thrive. So leaders need to push the culture, yes, stretch it, but gently, without breaking it. It's more evolution than revolution. A delicate dance.
Right, that makes sense. So why do these carefully planned strategies fail so often then? Beyond the culture clash, the sources pointed to some common culprits. They just get forgotten, or they're too vague, maybe way too complex, or they feel totally disconnected from what people actually do day to day. Other problems, setting way too many goals at once, ignoring what's happening outside the company, or just not allocating enough resources, underestimating what it takes.
Yeah, and the solutions offered were, well, pretty straightforward, but also quite deep. First big one. Don't set goals in isolation, in some executive bubble. Get diverse voices involved from all parts of the organization. Ground your decisions in actual data, current data, and make sure there are clear, well-communicated paths for how things will actually get done. Simplicity, clarity, and relevance, our sources kept coming back to those. They're your best friends in setting goals that people actually engage with and that deliver results. It's about weaving them into the daily fabric, not making them some separate, daunting project.
And that really circles back beautifully to what you call the human side of goal setting. It's just such a vital reminder, isn't it? Behind every single goal, every KPI, every strategy document, there are people.
Yeah.
And it's their belief, their hard work, their resilience when things get tough that actually determines if a goal becomes real or just stays an idea.
Precisely. The research was unanimous on this. Recognition matters. Ongoing support matters. Real, honest feedback matters. Leaders need to celebrate the wins along the way, coach people through the setbacks because there will be setbacks, and be willing to adapt based on what they're hearing from the front lines. Good strategic goals should feel uplifting, not crushing. They should challenge teams, absolutely, help them grow, but also provide the structure and support needed to actually succeed. As one source put it so well, people don't follow plans, they follow purpose. Make yours clear and inspiring.
And finally, let's maybe think about strategic goals as legacy building. Great organizations, the ones that last, aren't just defined by today's profits, but by what they aim for over the long run. Strategic goals, when they're truly understood and lived, they shape that story. They show what matters, they reflect the core values, and they chart the course for years to come. They help build something meaningful, something lasting. One source left us with this really powerful thought. What you choose to pursue today determines what the next generation inherits tomorrow. Wow. Okay, that was a really rich deep dive. Let's try and quickly nail down maybe the top 5 takeaways, focusing on those really core insights. First, strategic goals. Find that Goldilocks zone, bold enough to inspire, but real enough to keep people going.
Right.
Second, smart is foundational, sure, but the best goals also have that emotional connection. They're inspiring, they're adaptable, living things. Third, culture. Real communication, two-way communication and collaboration. Those are the engines of alignment. Get that wrong, and strategy stalls. Fourth, measure progress. Use clear metrics, review regularly, adapt. But crucially, be careful how tools like OKRs are used. Don't let them kill ambition by tying them too closely to performance reviews.
That's a key one.
And fifth, maybe the most important, great strategy isn't just about the plan. It has to be rooted in purpose, and is ultimately brought to life by people, their belief, their effort, their resilience.
Well summarized. And perhaps a final thought for you, our listener, to mull over. Thinking about your own work, your own projects, maybe even personal ambitions. What's a real deep purpose driving those efforts? And how might getting clearer on that purpose and then building adaptable, inspiring, emotionally resonant goals around it help you not just hit some target, but actually build something truly lasting, truly impactful for the future? Something like the visionary leaders and organizations we touched on today.
That's a fantastic question to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on the Deep Dive today. We really hope you can take these insights and apply them to your own goal setting, helping you make your own invisible.
Visible.
Until next time.